You know, I served for years in China, and we've seen lots of agreements by the Chinese, and the Chinese really don't live up to them. Now, there's supposed to be an enforcement provision in this agreement, maybe some kind of a snapback on tariffs, but it's important for us to remember there's no independent third-party world tribunal. And if we think China's not living up to its end of the deal, and China doesn't think we're living up to their end of the deal, there's no arbiter. So it really is back to where we were before. And all this really comes down to, in my judgment, based on many years dealing with China, we have to develop strength in America so that China finally respects us. And we need a long-term strategic plan toward China, which we do not have. It's always been very ad hoc. It's very ad hoc. And China thinks the long term, and China, therefore, takes advantage of us.
But in the past, all of those negotiations that have happened with previous administrations, they didn't use tariffs. You didn't see Huawei and other Chinese telcos added to blacklists. You didn't see the curbing of cross-border deals and the tightening of CFIUS to kind of go down the line here. So aren't we in uncharted territory as far as the possibility of enforcement does actually go?
Well, CFIUS is new. The United States has very much tightened up CFIUS, and I think that's good. But the bottom line here is that China, as becoming the largest country in the world, will not too many years from now, and the United States, the second largest, currently the largest country in the world, have to get along together. But there's deepening tension between the two. Part of it's Huawei, part of it's national security concerns, part of it's trade, part of it is China's getting, pretty proud of itself. It's got the wind of its back. It's, thinks it's a pretty big deal now. They're pretty proud. Nationalism is pretty strong there. So we have to figure out how we work together. This deal we talked about, frankly, is just very much on the surface. It doesn't get the fundamentals. But to get to the fundamentals, you're going to have to need a president who really understands this and thinks long term, puts together a strategic plan, and, even more important, works with our allies. We cannot get where we want to be with China alone. You cannot do it alone. China will divide and conquer. They're very good at it. We have to work with our allies if we're going to make progress.
Yeah. Meantime, the U.S., EU, Japan agreeing on new subsidy rules with China trade and focus, looking to basically, I guess, reform the WTO and the way state subsidies are enacted and what that looks like on a global basis. How meaningful is that?
Well, frankly, WTO needs to be reformed. It's not terribly relevant to today's world. It's taking a lot of work to reform it. Second, as a consequence, countries are going to go their own way. Japan, though as a Western country, will pursue policies much more similar to those we have. China, however, will go even more its own way. It feels that it can. That's its culture. It's not a democracy. There's no independent judiciary. There are no elections. And they think long term, and they're going to go where they want to be, and that is be one of the strongest countries in the world next 10 or 15 years.
Mr. Ambassador, I wonder what the American farmer should be thinking right now after a rough couple of years here regarding exports. Do they plant aggressively on the hopes that China lives by these commitments to buy American ag, or with the threat of tariffs still in place and, by extension, Chinese retaliation, is there the danger that they could plant and still have nowhere to sell it there?
Well, American farmers just have to do the best they can like anybody else. If we're talking about Iowa soybean farmers, soybeans, the major crop there, and it looks like China's going to be buying a lot more soybeans, and maybe 20, 30, 80 billion dollars worth, and that's very good. So if I were an Iowa farmer, I'd say, well, gee, I didn't like what Trump was doing. I don't like these tariffs that he imposed because it's really hurting me. But it's looking like maybe he was okay. Maybe we're going to get a deal here. So I think that probably a lot of Iowa farmers are thinking, well, we'll see. We'll find out what happens here. But it's looking kind of good. Maybe I'll stick with Trump in the next election as well because he seems to be making some progress. Although we weren't back to where we were before. A couple of years ago, we were selling a lot more soybeans to China than it looks like we may be under this agreement.